The month is November and the year is 2001, and the biggest thing that happened within America that year was obviously back in March, where WWE had announced that they had officially acquired WCW and ran a somewhat lackluster Invasion storyline. You've just bought a PS2 and SmackDown Just Bring It has just come out. With the WCW acquisition and the world changing in spectacular ways, how did the game fare in the end? Well, let's look back at what is WWF SmackDown Just Bring It. Throughout the Attitude Era, WWF's main competition was with Ted Turner and the World Championship Wrestling, then known as WCW. By the time 2001 had rolled around, there had been several different people running WCW, such as Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo. Unfortunately, WCW had been losing significant revenue year on year, and after losing their market share around 1998, losing THQ after transitioning to Electronic Arts and releasing several subpar quality releases, losing several of their top talents already to the WWE. This meant that by the start of the year, WCW was facing significant financial issues and were looking for a way out. In March of 2001, WWE shook the foundations of the wrestling world by acquiring WCW and ECW. Not only is this a monumental moment in history, how WWE announced this by having Shane McMahon appearing on WCW Nitro at the exact same time that Monday Night Raw was on the air was a pivotal moment in a lot of people's childhoods. I remember watching WCW Nitro in my room, and my brother was watching Raw in the other room, and when Shane McMahon appeared on my screen, I ran through to his room to see what the hell was going on. We then sat there just glued to the screen, literally watching history play out as Booker T walked out the WCW World and US Champion, as Shane confirmed that the name on the WCW contract was McMahon, but it was in fact Shane McMahon. This would then lead to an invasion storyline, where an influx of major WCW and ECW talent would invade the WWE, headlined by the likes of Booker T, DDP, Rhino, and Buff Bagwell, culminating in a special pay-per-view of the same name in July, where every match was an inter-promotional match, headlined by a gigantic tag team match where it was Team WWF versus Team Alliance. Although the quality of this storyline is heavily debated, and some boring legal stuff stopped some of the real main eventers from jumping over to the WWE, there is no question that at least the video games would surely get a wealth of new characters to choose from. While by the time that SmackDown Just Bring It came out in November, the lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund had begun, and those pandas were coming for the big Fed. As a result, this would be the last game to release with the WWF branding. Gameplay in Just Bring It is very familiar if you are a fan of SmackDown 1 and 2. The controls are still mostly the same too. Cross is your strike button, circle is your grapple button, triangle is run, square is the reversal button. Holding a direction on the directional pad or the left analog stick will change the attack or move that you are doing, and if your opponent is in a groggy or stunned state, then you will do a whole different set of attacks with the same button presses. One major improvement this year is that the reversal system has been reworked to not only improve the flow of matches, but also provide more opportunity for momentum shifting during matches. Since reversals will now either deal damage or put you in a key position for further attacks, it actually helps the match flow a lot better, allowing you to hit more moves and less focus on the positioning of your character. Another improvement is that superstars now have 2 finishing moves in their arsenal, meaning that characters like Chris Jericho will have access to the Walls of Jericho and the Lionsaw. Another example is The Undertaker with the Tombstone and the Last Ride. It allows for more player expression, as you can now choose which finisher you would prefer to do. There has also been major improvements under the hood too, as the game now runs at a silky smooth 60 frames per second with very minimal slowdown during busy moments. The immediate fighting area has also been expanded, allowing players to now take the action into the crowd. People may laugh at the implementation now as cardboard cutout fans skate their way out of the action, but I've always quite liked how you were easily able to take the action into the fans, just like how often it did actually happen in the 2000s main event scene. With those technical improvements, the Royal Rumble has seen a simple but quality of life improvement. In SmackDown 2, entrants in the Rumble would take a while to appear as the data was being streamed off the disc and the player would have to wait for every single entrant to load. With improvements to data streaming off of the DVD-ROM and the increased memory capabilities of the PS2, the data streaming is considerably faster to the point where the Royal Rumble features absolutely no delay between entrants now. Before we get into the full game mode breakdown, the game now also features 6-man matches, again with the increased horsepower of the PS2 and the simplified graphic style of Just Bring It. Matches like the Rumble can feature up to 6 characters on screen at any time, and this is actually something we would not see again for several years, all the way up until WWE 2K18. Just Bring It is also the first mainline game to receive play-by-play commentary, although it did make its appearance in Acclaim's WWF Attitude. Michael Cole and Taz debut here with a commentary of varying quality. It takes a complicated approach of setting up multiple lines where names and certain emotions can be input in the gaps, but the gaps between the lines and the names is a little too obvious, and even more so when the emotion of the line doesn't quite match the name delivery. As a result, you're going to hear the same lines over and over again, and as mentioned, the quality of the commentary just isn't very good.
I've never seen a fight like this before. It is electric in this arena tonight.
Rhino is the best World Wrestling Federation tag team champion we've ever had.
With that being said, there is actually a cut feature that is displayed on the back of the game box, where you do see a 3D model of Michael Cole and Taz. This was going to be displayed in the corner of the screen during matches to provide more emphasis on the commentary during the match. Even with this feature being cut, the mechanic of the picture-in-picture box was then reused for character run-ins. So when a character interrupts a match, you will see a box appear highlighting the character who is running in before they sprint to the ring to either help or hinder you. Earlier on, I had alluded to the acquisition of WCW and ECW, and the influx of new talent that you may have been watching on the weekly TV shows. Although there were significant roster additions at this time, very few of them actually made it into this game. As a result, the game's roster clocks in at 43, which is much less than the previous game's 66. I don't think there's any official statement as to why the roster is smaller, but the omissions from WCW and ECW are the biggest offenders in my opinion. Some of the talent who jumped ship earlier can be found in the game, such as Jerry Lynn, Rhino, and Tajiri. But some of the biggest players like DDP, Booker T, Ric Flair, and Billy Kidman wouldn't appear in the game until next year. Interestingly though, Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit fame would appear as an unlockable character and apparently was included in the game on the basis that Ukes would be able to use Rollin' as the Undertaker's entrance theme for free or a reduced fee if they had added him into the game as a playable character. This year, Ukes bucked the trend and decided not to include a traditional season mode into the game. Story mode would instead replace the season mode from previous years, and as a result, we would now see a single storyline per playthrough per character that is controversial to say the least. Leading to the pay-per-view matches in the story mode, there will be in-game cutscenes. These recap the story so far, and in general are quite hype, to be fair, leading into the match. Although each story is very short, I do appreciate that the champions carry forward into each story, which does create some kind of continuity. And it does lead to lots of replayability as you try to play each story and unlock all the rewards in the mode. The story mode features multiple backstage areas in which your character can free roam and decide to talk to superstars in the area or influence the story decision. These areas are reused in Falls Count Anywhere matches or brawls that take place outside of the ring. As a result, there are multiple interactions and new weapons around these areas. For example, in the parking lot, there is a forklift and cars which characters can actually get into and have a little joyride in. There are mops, chairs, stop signs, a whole load of weapon choices, and all these weapons have unique interactions too. You can set up chairs in a seated position and your character can finally take a seat and have a rest during those strenuous matches. The Creation Suite has also seen a significant improvement this year as Create a Superstar has more unique character parts than ever before. They have now implemented a layer system too, so if you want to have a t-shirt under a jacket, this can finally be done this year. Body and face morphing has also been introduced, so you can finally create any fresh nightmare that you've ever dreamed of. Alongside your nightmares character that can be created, Create a Taunt has also been updated this year. You can now create a taunt with any 4 steps that you can think of, and any superstar wouldn't be complete without a move set. This year, there are even more move animations to choose from. You can finally adjust the base roster move sets too. So if a character like Kurt Angle was to do a move in real life that you wanted him to do in the game, you can add it to his moveset if you so desired. Anytime you start up the game, you'll not be met with the typical SmackDown intro as per the previous games. Instead, you'll be treated to an extremely high quality pre-rendered intro video highlighting many of the main stars on the show at the time, such as Kurt Angle, Triple H, and The Undertaker. This video is incredible. A fully animated crowd, wrestling moves with a reactive ring, Triple H hitting the pedigree with his hair flowing in gravity. As you will have noticed throughout this video, the game does not actually look anything like this. Video games have historically been able to get away with things like this. Think like Assassin's Creed, where every year they get announced with this crazy detailed pre-rendered video, but when the game launches, it looks absolutely nothing like the advertised video. I've personally never understood why the games industry gets away with this, considering that if any other industry did this, they would undoubtedly get flagged for false advertising or misrepresentation. But here we are. And to be honest, the intro video is amazing, so maybe I'm just old man yelling at clouds. Although the intro video may not represent the actual quality of the game, it cannot be understated how great the game actually does look. It clearly wasn't the graphical step up that people were expecting at the time, and considering where the game would end up in the SmackDown vs. Raw series, it's clear that Just Bring It just doesn't leverage the full power of the PS2. But graphically, it is good enough, I would say. Now that the ring and the stage are in the same game map, and we finally have 3D entrances, although they aren't fully animated as there are cases where the character will jump from the ramp to the ring, it's a great step forward for improving the presentation and making it much more like what you would actually see on WWE TV. Talking of entrances, this game makes a very odd decision in giving you many of that year's pay-per-view arenas to choose from, but not in the way that you would expect. Although you have access to WrestleMania 17 and the Insurrection stages from that year, all other pay-per-view arenas take place in a version of the WrestleMania 2000 stage with a designed ring mat for that pay-per-view. I admit that the ring designs are mostly great. It's just a very odd choice to not have any of your pay-per-views accurately represented in the game. They even included an arena for Fully Loaded, which didn't even happen that year as it was replaced by the Invasion pay-per-view. I do have to give them credit for including the SmackDown Fist arena in the game though as a hidden unlockable, as the stage had only debuted 3 months prior to the game releasing. I mentioned earlier that the game has now included play-by-play commentary. Just Bring It is also the first game to feature ring announcers during the characters' entrances by none other than the legendary Howard Finkel. I've personally always loved the way that the Fink would announce people's names, but there's something about the audio compression here that kind of ruins the line delivery. Even with that though, it's just so great to have him here. SmackDown Just Bring It ushered in a new era in gaming, being the first WWE game on the PS2 and following the legacy that the previous 2 games had paved. It is ultimately disappointing as it feels more like SmackDown 2 but on a new console, with less characters and a lesser season mode to boot. It has many great improvements such as 6-man matches and an on-screen referee, audio commentary, and expanded backstage areas including fighting in the crowd, but it still wasn't really enough to set itself apart from SmackDown 1 and 2 on the previous generation consoles. With the power of hindsight, we know that almost every complaint about Just Bring It is improved in the next release. SmackDown Shut Your Mouth would include a whole new season mode, a better represented roster, a huge graphical improvement, accurate arenas for every pay-per-view of that year, and so much more. In my brain, I've always seen SmackDown 1, 2, and Just Bring It as a bit of a trilogy, with SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, Here Comes the Pain, and SmackDown vs. Raw basically being the next trilogy. Looking at the reviews at the time, courtesy of Metacritic, Total Games praised the fact that they slowed down the gameplay just a little bit, making it more accurate to what was happening on TV. BBC would give the game an 87 out of 100, praising the presentation improvements with new authentic entrances. GameSpy would praise the additions of the Creation Suite, and Game Revolution would praise the one-button reversal system. Just Bring It was favourably reviewed by critics at the time, and I remember in my school playground everyone couldn't stop talking about it. I think with Father Time marching on as he tends to do, and the hindsight of playing a further 24 wrestling games, it's very easy to nitpick the game and focus on negatives. But looking at it isolated to 2001, it's clear that it was another hit from Yuke's. But the audience had no idea what they would end up getting next year. In the end, I think we can confidently say that SmackDown Just Bring It was a solid game for its time. With all that had happened to the WWE in 2001, it's clear that Yuke's were set up to release an incredible game, but perhaps the development on the new PS2 hardware caused even more issues than we ever realized. As a result, fans felt that the roster was out of date, and there were so many missing stars from the Invasion storyline that didn't make it into this game. Graphically, it's a fine update, but it is hard to deny that the lack of arena variety is disappointing. WWF at the time had a renown for having unique stage designs and theming for every single pay-per-view that came along every month, and it's very disappointing to not be able to accurately recreate your favourite matches from that year in the game. I've always felt like Just Bring It was quite like a SmackDown 2.5. There just isn't quite enough obvious and immediate improvements to say that this is exactly what a next-gen WWE game is all about. That feeling would ultimately be satisfied by the next game, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. I mean, with all this chatter about SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, maybe we've just not given Just Bring It a fair shake. It really is a great game, it really is. It's one of my favourite games to replay due to the speed of the gameplay and the simplicity of the control system. But I also can't look past the fact that, to me, back in 2001, this game was quite disappointing. Even though I've already made the point that SmackDown Shut Your Mouth improves on everything the next year, with the power of hindsight of, 20 plus years later, really we should just be lucky that we got two amazing games, and really every WWE game on the PS2 was so wildly different and improved on itself in ways that WWE 2K could never really replicate. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Just Bring It is one of my favorites, and it's been very fun to dive back into it, and I know from the viewership it's definitely one of your favorites too, since it's always a top performer on the channel. But that is going to be us for today. I hope you have a great day. Remember to layeth the SmackDown, and bye for now.